audience? Yeah, we're going to have... Thank you. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of September 2nd. We'll start with roll call.
Chair Pevsner.
Here.
Vice Chair Dennison.
Here.
Commissioners Dellis.
Here.
Hutt. And Spears.
Present.
Excellent. Okay, very good. We'll start with approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Okay. Need a second?
I'll second it.
And second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Good. All right, very good. Council liaison report?
Nothing to report, Chair.
Very good. Excellent. Very good. All
Approval of
right.
minutes.
Oh, that's right. The approval of minutes from August 19th. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Anybody have any changes?
I'm good. You spelled my name right.
I move we accept the minutes as presented.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent, very good. All right, so at this time, we're going to bypass the community input section, which is for items that are not on the present agenda. We're going to move into our discussion item. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be basically an educational session. We're going to talk about two items regarding the Meadows project, and we're going to start with an educational presentation on water. And then, no, I'm sorry, we're going to start with fire.
Fire.
And then on water. And I just want to set the tone before we have the presentation to say that I'd like everybody to remain civilized. I know some of these are emotional issues. I don't want to have to stop the meeting or potentially ask someone to leave because they get unruly. And that goes with, I don't want any cheering, clapping, even, I don't want any high fives or anything. I would like everybody just to remain silent because we don't know who's in the audience for or against, and I'd appreciate that, that amount of civility, and I kind of expect that from our community. So, so going forward, I guess, having said that, we'll go ahead and start with the first presentation.
So I'd also like to
sorry.
remind everybody that we do have speaker cards at the back of the room.
Okay.
So if you do want to come to the podium and provide a comment, please fill that out and hand it to Jen Peterson. Speaker cards.
I thought we were doing community input.
We're going to take, I've changed the agenda. We're going to change the community for items not on the agenda so we can do the educational part, which was the purpose of this meeting in the first place. I mean, if there's only one or two people with an item that's not on the agenda, I can change that. Does anybody else want to speak on something that's not on the agenda? How There's three? All right, if you could, I'll tell you what, go ahead and relax. We'll let them speak, but I'll go ahead and let you talk, but limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
And we still need the speaker cards completed, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, go ahead.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Deb Sheridan, Valley Vista Drive. Thank you for letting me speak. And I am before you tonight to alert you of 3 disturbing new laws, 2 of which have just passed and will go before Governor Newsom to sign. These laws will benefit developers and will hurt all of us who are homeowners or renters. And ironically, here they are in this week's Mountain Views News that I was going to speak on. I had no idea. The first law is SB 9. This law allows for lot splitting and can add 2 ADUs on each lot. CEQA does not apply. I will repeat, CEQA does not apply. Homeowners must pay off their mortgage first and obtain a new one for construction. Just think, Commissioners, how many of you can pay off your mortgage and then get a loan for $1 million to add any ADUs? And you know who has that kind of money. It's developers. The homeowner also must agree to live in their house for 3 years. And if they don't, it's up to the city to enforce the law. The city, yeah, sure. as if they have the manpower to go knock on doors and ask if you're still living there. The second one is SB 10. Anyone can build up to a 10-unit apartment building with a large enough lot in a transit-rich site. As we have learned from the RENA explanations and the discussions about our bus routes through town, people can call a number and get a ride somewhere. Does this qualify as transit-rich? I wouldn't doubt it. Also, in remodeling, 25% of an outside wall must remain. You all know what happens with that. And I can show you a house on my block that was totally rebuilt with 25% of the outside wall. So, and that's what they had said, but there was nothing left, and then they rebuilt it from the bottom up. And as I said, you of all planning commissioners have seen that before. Another danger is this law supersedes anything voted on by the residents. In other words, the Measure V portion of downtown is now in danger. Commissioners, we have a housing crisis, but instead of helping where this has happened, it leads to gentrification, prices and rents increase, and that results in more homelessness. It's been happening. Under the guise of helping, these two laws will hurt our neighborhoods. Our town will not help the disadvantaged, but it will line the coffers of the developers. These laws will destroy single-family neighborhoods. Isn't that our American dream, to live in our home in a nice neighborhood, aka our Mayberry, Sierra Madre? Now, here comes the worst bill of all.
Excuse me.
SB
Can you finish up?
478.
Hello. 3 minutes, please.
Oh,
Yeah, you're over, but
Okay.
if you want to have someone continue it, that's fine. Thanks. You have a timer? Oh. Jim, just give me that.
Gary Hood, good evening. Thanks for allowing me to speak here. I'm taking over where Debbie left off, and she was saying, now here comes the worst bill of all bills, Senate Bill 478. It overrides cities' abilities to locally zone multifamily residential zone. It forbids cities from specifying any minimum lot size to build these big units. Unlike SB 10, it is mandatory. Cities have absolutely no say in what gets built in their towns. Just think, with the passage of SB 9 and 10, now anything can be built on the monastery property regardless of what the agreement with the city has been reached or what their specific plan says. Just think, any commissioners looking out your window and seeing apartments, duplex crammed into your street instead of the deer looking in your window. There is a coalition of mayors, including Mayor Arizamendes, who are fighting these horrible bills. What can you do as our planning commission? I don't know. I do remember one commissioner saying, we don't know what the state will impose next. What I do know is that you've been so good at keeping Sierra Madre the wonderful electric town it is. We have got to keep this fight going. Please call your Assemblyman Holden, representing Portantino, and urge them to oppose these latest horrendous bills before it's too late. Please call Governor Newsom and request that he vetoes these bills. And I would like to say, as I have a minute left, that I was wondering if the Planning Commission could consider bringing these bills up to the attention of the community when they first come out, as the City Council has not done so far in the past. It would be nice for the community to know that someone is watching out for the community as these SBs are running not only our state, but the little village that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's one other?
Here we go.
Is this for a comment not on the agenda?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm here because Vincent asked me to be here to present information about the trees because I had some other ideas. The trees exist up at the monastery, and according to the plan that you're going to look at tonight, but you're not going to get in necessarily to the trees. There are 101 trees that are going to be bulldozed, this being one. It is a coastal oak. It is a protected tree in the city of Sierra Madre. But because this is a specific plan, all of the rules and regulations that govern the town when these plans were put into place go out the window. This is a 100-year-old tree. It is 40 feet wide and, 40 feet high and 50 feet wide. Rather than being bulldozed, I was thinking it would be a much better thing to take one of the one of the lots that they're planning to build a house on and create a park, putting in grass, benches, and put a light on this so that everyone can enjoy this gorgeous tree. What has it done to deserve this fate? I have no idea. But there are 101 trees slated to be destroyed. Given how many trees we lost in our 10 years ago, our 100-year windstorm, there are 64 jacaranda trees that are going to be removed. There are 10 more oaks that are going to be removed. There is the most fabulous mortis fig you've ever seen in your life. I actually found the name of a tree mover that the Huntington and Disney uses, and I gave it to James Carlson, who is in charge of this. So, I mean, I'm trying to work to get information to the city, but I'm going to be in tears if this tree gets demolished. It doesn't deserve this kind of a fate. So, that's all I have to say about the tree tonight.
Thank you.
And just if I can clarify for the record, that is a spectacular specimen tree, but it's actually a Moreton Bay fig.
Well, this one's the oak. This is the coastal oak.
Okay, James Carlson went up to the site today to look at that, and that's what he indicated to me, that it was a Moreton Bay fig.
Well, there's 5 Morton figs, and 10 oaks. It just depends on which one you're looking at.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to argue with you, Vincent,
Okay.
at all. I'm just trying to say, this can't happen. This just can't happen. This is my little note to you. It's 13 pages of an outline that I was working on my concerns. I have turned it into the city, but this should let you know, this is me, working to try to save this tree. Yes.
You are, it would be really helpful if everybody says their names.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Nancy
Oh, yeah,
Beckham.
really? What?
I'm Nancy Beckham,
Nancy Beckham, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Nancy.
thank you.
Okay. All right, last.
Hi, good evening. I'm Alex Arietta. I'm at 645 Edgeview. I'm going to speak with you for a few minutes about the draft EIR. It's not on the agenda this evening. Draft EIR for the housing development. And I've heard some comments. I'm going to read them. You will all hear a lot about how great the draft EIR is, but the citizens are being asked to comment on its contents without being allowed to see the original. Sierra Madre citizens are being blocked from what should be a public document by our own city. Now, when you discuss the housing element, you asked to be able to compare it with the original, and the city agreed with that. We would ask for the same consideration to be given before reviewing and commenting on the draft EIR. This is a critical document. It affects what your own decision-making will be relative to the housing project. So it's important that you see what the original document was and is. The reviewer of the draft EIR was a company called Dudek, who was hired by New Urban West, the developer, in December 2020. They were the Sierra Madre consultant hired to be an independent reviewer of this draft EIR. That reviewer worked with the developer for 7 months, 7 months, to produce the draft EIR that was released at the beginning of this month. So 7 months. We and you will not be able to see the original because our city is preventing that from occurring with no valid explanation, right? And how did that happen? Well, that happened because there was an amendment that was made to the original agreement, and this independent reviewer is reviewing it on behalf of the city, but there's an amendment between that independent reviewer. That independent reviewer is a company called MIG. That's an acronym for it. And the amendment basically allowed MIG to retain possession of that document versus the city, okay? Which is ludicrous to me that that would occur, but it happened. This is a copy that we solicited through public records of the amendment, and it reflects how the city is crossed out and MIG is inserted as the owner of this document. We asked the city attorney why that was done. Initially, he said it was to clarify what was exempt from being PRR. And subsequent, he said it was part of the city's legal strategy. So we're asking that you review this and that you agree with us and insist that the original DIR is available for review to you as you head into this most critical period of reviewing this. And it's really important right now because we're in that comment period. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can clarify for the record as well.
Sure.
The third-party review is MIG. You referenced, Mr. Arrieta, you mentioned that that was DUDEC, but DUDEC was the firm that prepared the draft EIR.
And one further clarification, the city hasn't denied the documents that Mr. Arya is referring to. A Public Records Act request has been submitted, and the city is compiling the documents. Now, if those documents are ultimately denied, then his statement will be valid, but the city still hasn't denied any documents. We have 14 days to provide those documents, so it's currently under review, just for clarification. And the original drafts, there are no original drafts. We have versions that have been that the DUDEC has been working on and have been making notes to, but the draft ER that was published, that's what's in circulation right now, and then there's going to be a final ER to come. So what Mr. Arrieta wants are the notes that DUDEC and MIG have put together. And like I said, a Public Records Act request has been submitted, and we will comply with the law in turning over whatever documents are required to be turned over under the law.
You've already indicated that they're not going to be provided. And there was an initial draft ERR that was prepared. That was in December 2020, and that's what has been
Yeah.
over.
Excuse me. Yeah, that's going to have to end it. Thank you for your comments. That's fine.
You also be fair to the facts.
Okay, we're aware. Thank you. All right, so, okay, this is the last person not on the agenda. Go ahead.
Sorry, my name is Tricia Sarsi. I live at 734 Fairview Avenue, and initially I was going to make my comments later, but I think that's more appropriate as not on the agenda.
Okay.
In regard to this issue, quickly too, I did have a conversation with Mr. Garagosian where he said the city was not going to turn over those drafts because legally they didn't have to, and so they weren't going to. So I just want to make that clear. Then also, what I want to address here is that it seems to me that the process that's unfolding here is kind of the cart before the horse, because what's being presented to the public is information regarding the EIR. Before we get to any kind of EIR, I don't recall that there has been any hearing before this commission or for the city council where any information has been presented to the residents, that there is a choice to be made for the residents to decide, should the city exempt this developer from our zoning laws and from our general plan? That question has not been presented, nor has the question been presented, if we do that, grant this special exemption to this developer, what should the city get in return? Residents, what do you want in return? The way things have unfolded so far, a year before a development application was even presented, the city entered into an MOU, a memorandum of understanding that was aimed at a joint effort with the common goal of exempting this developer from our zoning laws and from our general plan. Recently confirmed in writing by Mr. Reynoso to me when I said this project doesn't conform to our laws. My view of the Planning Commission, it's your job to enforce our laws. If a project comes to you Right now, what's happening is you're not just processing the application. You entered into an agreement to exempt this project from our laws without discussing it with the residents or presenting any information why that would be happening. So, to my mind, that's what should be happening first. This zoning question should be decided. And the residents should be given some idea why project is even being considered before we start getting into what are the environmental impacts and can they be mitigated. At the outset, this project does not comply with our laws. Why is it being considered? If any other person came up and said, I have this project, you could say, no, doesn't meet our zoning specifications, doesn't comply with the general plan. Mr. Reynoso has said, well, we're going to fix that by changing the general plan. And I think that goes beyond the Planning Commission's authority to just to say one property owner, say, well, we're going to give a specific plan to you. The specific plans that I've been aware of are plans for organizations that are giving a benefit back to the community. This specific plan is primarily, solely to benefit this property owner. And it's actually going to burden the rest of the community. Just for one example is for affordable housing. Our requirement for affordable housing is going to go up. Mr. Garagosian has told me we can't make them give us affordable housing. So somebody else is going to have to do it. But what I also found out is that St. Rita's didn't agree to have a congregational overlay, but they're still being put on the housing element as, yes, you want them to do it.
Okay,
But the same thing is not happening with the monastery. So,
Thank you.
okay. Thanks very much for your time.
All right. Okay, now we'll move forward with the presentation from the fire chief.
I just wanted to make a quick
go
statement.
ahead. Go ahead, Vince.
Also that wanted to remind everybody and encourage you to submit your comments regarding the draft DIR in writing. The end of the public comment period is October 4th, so there are 33 days that remain from today for that public comment period. As Chair Pevsner indicated, we have two issues that we are going to address today. We're going to start with wildfire and then go to the second item, which is water supply. So we do have two PowerPoints, and if we can launch that now.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present on the topics of key issues for wildfire. I know we've heard some concerns from residents as well. And so what I'm going to be doing is talking on a couple of the topics. If I can get this thing to go. The next slide. The topics that we've heard about, basically, obviously, are the location of the proposed project, vegetation within that area, access for fire department or public safety in general, and the homes themselves. So I was just going to provide some information on those topics as we've heard them as well. As we all know, the location is going to be at the Madre de la Rosa Passionate Retreat, or the monastery, as is probably more well known. And the proposed project is going to be the meadows at Bailey Canyon. We can see that obviously the outline portion of the retreat center is still going to be in red. Proposed project is the section in the orange. So the location definitely is going to be a concern of our residents. I understand that. And I'm going to try and hopefully speak to that a little bit if we could. Some terms that you may hear in the fire service will be WUI, or Wildland Urban Interface. And that'll provide your definition on it, basically. And it's a transition between unoccupied land and human development. A good portion of our town, obviously, is in the Wildland Urban Interface, as we all know. The other one is going to be something that we're very familiar with, as well as a very high fire hazard severity zone. It's California law that CAL FIRE identifies these areas so we can address them properly and put plans in place basically to mitigate these issues. So with that, we know in these areas we have vegetation. Anybody that's been up into our mountains on our trail systems, you see, you'll probably see these this particular scenery here. This is from Bailey Canyon area. And yes, we do have the vegetation up there, and obviously it is a big concern of ours as we just got out of the Bobcat fire. But there are some things that are going to be in place. And one thing that I'd like to definitely acknowledge, right, is that the fire department obviously has a great interest in the proposed project, as our sole interest or existence is to protect and serve our beloved community. And we don't take that task very lightly, and we are going to make sure that codes are followed, regulations are followed, and it's going to provide that safety issue. So some of the things that I wanted to speak to are all the codes that are currently in place that we are going to make sure that are abided by, right? And that's going to be for the safety of the community, the safety for our responding firefighters and our neighboring firefighters. California Fire Code is going to be a key part in this, particularly Chapter 49, where the requirements for wildland-urban interface, that WUI that I spoke to. In particular, Section 4906, which is hazardous vegetation and fuel management. We will be following these codes, or making sure that these codes are adhered to if this project should go through. On the next one, please. Another code that we have is the California Building Code. Yes, it does have a section in there, Chapter 7A and Section 701A, .5, that also reflects and refers to vegetation management compliance. So again, we will be making sure that codes are being followed when and if the proposed project gets to the development stages, and we are starting to think about it. For those that attended last week's presentation from the fire department, we talked heavily on vegetation and also on home hardening for wildfires. CAL FIRE has put out defensible space zones, which basically are zones up to 100 feet. If we we referred back to, which we don't need to, I'm assuming everybody's going to know, the proposed area for the development is well out of the 100-foot range of the vegetation that currently exists. That the vegetation is actually right up next to the monastery area. So just speaking factually, it's well out of that 100-foot range. But what we are also going to make sure is that codes are followed, and this defensible space is also followed as well. CAL FIRE has issued, there used to be 2 zones, and now they've issued basically they're going to be instituting a 3rd zone, which is from 0 to 5 feet. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit on there. Zone 0 is basically ember resistant zone. So that's going to be all of the structure itself, as well as vegetation inside of that first 5 feet. And we've been finding in the fire service that most structure fires are due to embers, not necessarily the radiant heat or the direct impingement of fire itself. So that is going to be something that is new. Obviously, we've had quite a bit of fire history to study and research here as of late even. So these are some new things that are coming. Zone 1 basically is you kind of reduce it down. It starts almost from nothing, mineral soil type of thing, and fire resistant materials, and it kind of works its way out into vegetation, right, if that kind of makes sense. So Zone 1 is basically you're going to keep it lean and clean and a green zone for that 5 to 30 foot radius. Okay. Zone 2 is the reduced fuel zone, so that's anything greater than 30 feet up to 100 feet. And that's where we're going to be looking, where we're as homeowners, we're looking to reduce the density of all the vegetation that's in there. Okay, spacing between them, trimmed, limbed up, what we refer to as new ladder fuels, those kind of things. This type of approach to the homes and is really going to help in the reduction of potential fires. The other concern that we have heard is fire department access or public safety access in a whole. As it currently exists, we have Sunnyside that gets us up into the monastery with an access road off of Carter as well. And I know in the draft EIR there is talk about converting Carter into an in and out type of access as well and what have you. So again, just keeping with the facts if we could. There is California Fire Code as well in Chapter 5, Fire Service Features, Section 503, Fire Apparatus Access Roads. Our main concern on that for the fire department is maintaining a minimum of 20 feet, basically from curb to curb. And that's going to allow us access in and out and also access for us to work. Should that be the area that we have to park our apparatus and you know, get our equipment and our tools out. Onto homes, which is obviously something that we are trying to educate on currently, not only for future development, but for existing structures that we have in our home or in our community as well. There are many codes that regulate what has to be done as well. California Residential Code, in particular, Chapter 3, Building Planning, and Section R337, Materials and Construction Methods for Exterior Wildfire Exposures. Again, these are things that we're going to be looking at to make sure that should the proposed project go through, they're in compliance with these codes. The other one is going to be the California Building Code. This is one that is very active right now in the state, is Chapter 7A, Materials and Construction Methods for Exterior Wildfire. You're going to see that the prior one and this one, they mirror each other identically. But 7A is also referred to as home hardening. That's kind of the term that's floating around there. And so what I wanted to do is kind of touch on what the homes, should they be built there, be required to have. And basically it's going to be referring to Section 704A, ignition resistant construction. So all materials in there, from the roof, roof coverings, vents, and soffits and gutters, all the way into the exterior walls, your sidings, your sheetings, doors and windows. Windows are required to be double paned, and even your decks, the decking surfaces and finishes, and then on the bottom on there, it's really hard to see, but I apologize, is your landscaping as well. So that's that zone 0 that we referred to. Okay. The other thing that obviously is going to be required in homes, in any new construction, and as well as any, drawing a blank here, but any remodeled homes, once you get to past a certain percentage, we will require fire protection systems or automatic sprinklers. These new homes, should they go in, will be required to have automatic fire sprinklers in there, as referenced right here in California Fire Code Chapter 9 in Section 903. Is that all of them? Okay, and so basically, to kind of, again, circle back to it, is the fire department, obviously, that's our concern, is safety, as it is with the residents, and I've had the pleasure of speaking with a number of residents that are here this evening, either on the phone or out in the streets, and trying to hopefully educate them on our approach to this, as well as addressing their concerns. And again, those are some of the concerns that I've heard personally. So I'm hoping that it brings light to how we are going to approach it as a fire department, and that is absolutely by adhering to codes and regulations. And we're fortunate in today's society that we have plenty of codes and regulations in place to help protect structures and life and property, basically. So we will be making sure that they're here too. And welcome any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you. Questions from the commission?
Chief, behind the monastery itself is a poured concrete structure. And behind it, you have a green belt of reduced fuel. So a fire coming down from the hillside has to go through that area, past the monastery retreat building, and then through the brush that's south of that before it gets to these homes.
That's a fair statement, absolutely, yes.
Does the fire department get involved at all in, we have not seen designs for any of these homes or anything like that, but when they come to the vegetation management and the design of these homes, does the fire department get to sign off on that?
The fire department will sign off on it, absolutely. It will not go forward without our signatures.
So these houses will be built and inspected to code?
Correct.
Okay.
Anyone else? A question? Can I ask, I'm gonna ask a question, I'm not sure if this is in your purview or not. Search and rescue, when we had, as bivouacked up there, at that open area, and you don't have to speak to it if this isn't something that you have anything to do with, but I know that the sheriffs and some of the other local law enforcement have said since it's not up in the hills when they do a rescue, they've used that flattened area and they've been able to land helicopters. Do you see an area that would still exist in the area that's not going to be built on that could be used for that, or?
Actually, that's a really good question. I have heard that from our residents before. In my 21 years here, I'm not even aware of any helicopter landings there except for one. And this was a while ago when Kobe Bryant actually landed here to do a commercial shoot over in Pasadena. And we, as the fire department, were up there to make sure that it was safe for him to land and such. But other than that, even during the Bobcat, not to say that it had, and my recollection is nothing has landed there as far as a helicopter for rescues or for fire protection parts. We do have, LA County has basically helipads, if you will, that are scattered about the local hills. We have one that's up at the top of Chantry Flats. There's one over by Eaton Canyon Golf Course as well. Those are probably our two closest, along with one over in Monrovia. So should we have to land any rescued individuals, that would probably be the place to do it. In most cases, when we rescue people, they are going to the hospital, which will probably be at Huntington, and the helicopter flies directly there.
Right, and coming down the road from Chantry, if you had to land there, is, 3 miles of.
Yeah, and like the one that I'm referring to at Chantry it is at the top.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
even
yeah.
past the PAC station.
Ride my bike there all the time. Thank
Yes.
you. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, Chief, I think in the past, we have provided water to helicopters who've landed for like 93 brush fire. But now, as we know from the Bobcat fire, the helicopters all have a pump and they hover over whatever water they want and they don't have to land to be replenished with water. So that kind of activity is not as necessary. And people in Sierra Madre watched the helicopters line up and take water out of our own settling basins and not have to land. So they did not need a landing
Correct.
place per
Like
se.
I said, 93 was right before I got here. I moved here
Yeah.
in 94, so since then, since I've been on the department, I haven't that recollection. But you're absolutely correct. Today's aircraft, especially the helicopters, have that ability. And fortunately, we have a basin that they dip into, and they use snorkels and buckets to get that water out. And if they need to actually fill up via an apparatus or a hose, i.e. the Bobcat, we did that over in Monrovia's area is where we were.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is anybody else? Okay, very good. Right. So at this time, I'm going to let anyone in the audience come up and ask a question, or you can make a comment of some sort. And
About the fire.
yeah, just about fire, just about the presentation.
Yeah, my name is Susan Newhausen. I live up at the top of Grove. So there's the SEIR update to the general plan, and in it there's objective HZ7, which says avoid expanding development into undeveloped areas in very high fire severity zones. Well, it seems to me that the Meadows is in a very high fire severity zone, so I guess the question is, if that's the city's policy to avoid expanding development into undeveloped areas, then this seems like it's all a moot point. I appreciate all that the fire marshal or captain was discussing, and I think it's all well and good. People put in their houses, they'll abide by the vegetation rules. Vegetation grows, and people can plant what they want. There are no fire marshal police as far as I know, so I think it sounds good on paper. I think the reality is that doesn't happen. I think fires, if they get big enough, look at the Calder fire, it's not just going to come down the mountain and bypass the monastery. It could be coming up and going east and west. The road to Carter at maximum, I think, is 20 feet, so that barely doesn't really, you wanted a minimum of 20 feet. I think at Carter it's a maximum of 20 feet. It's really not sufficient. I have sprinklers in my house. I think they will work well if I have a fire in my house. I think if I have a fire going from the top into my house, I really don't think they're going to work. If you have a massive wildfire, I think water pressure will be gone, in which case sprinklers are not really going to save anybody's house. But I think the biggest issue is the avoid expanding development into undeveloped areas in very high fire severity zones. That's the city's policy. This is a development in a very high fire severity zone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Gene Bardenhire. We live at 471 North Sunnyside, 3 doors from the entrance to the monastery there. And I think the fire concern is very real for us. Several years ago, we did see the flames running along the ridge right above us and behind the monastery itself, coming over from the from the Arcadia side. And so we were actually evacuated. And it wasn't long after that that the insurance company gave us the good news that our area was rezoned into unacceptable fire risk. And they actually terminated our fire insurance, and we had to look around, and we did find another company willing to provide coverage. But it does throw into some question just how safe the area really actually is. I would say the fire codes are wonderful. Those are great rules. Nature doesn't read them, and there's a very good chance that if this were to come our way again, we would be looking at a new 42 home example of what happened in Paradise, California. It could easily all burn. One thing is for sure, the insurance companies felt it was too risky, even in our zone, our spot, which is actually 3 houses further removed from the south end of this proposed development. So codes and regulations, they sound good. I'm sure they are in urban areas, but in this urban interface area, this really amounts to thumbing your nose at God. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Philip Yao. I've been a resident here since 1985. I haven't come to this quorum for quite a while. I think when my kids was in Boy Scout, Girl Scouts, they had different awards. We may have attended, but nothing that is official in this capacity that you guys are dealing with, namely the medals. New to this, as you well know, a couple of quick things. People have brought up some pretty good, questions. In this type of a quorum, do they get an answer? I mean, this gentleman here has brought up a few things. Will they get an answer? And where's that answer going to be posted? And as far as, residents here are confused, concerned, suspicious of what's happening. For the sake of transparency, I mean, I'm been around a little bit, worked in industry. There are many ways to track edits. And posting documents, regardless how you guys may elect to do that, is not an expensive proposition. You know, having to go through all this, you know, official requests and so on seems like a pilly game that is being put upon residents here and making their life harder to understanding this project. Thank you, Fire Chief. I really do like you guys, okay? There has been a number of helicopter landings, and that's, I don't know if I, you know, told you where I live. I live off of Sierra Keys, right adjacent to the monastery. We'll call it a monastery, Madre de la Rosa, okay? So I'm going to be directly affected. In fact, my property, my backyard, has a retaining wall that is about 6.5 feet plus. And then there's a berm. And in the past, quite a few people walk by and they peek into my property until the until Madre de la Rosa thought that it was just too much an intrusion into their space. And they put in a do not trespass sign. And that reduced a lot of that traffic. So this project's going to have undue influence in my life. Okay, a couple of major things that I'd like to mention. And I'm not a fire code expert or anything like that. Got 35 seconds. Have you guys looked at, you know, current codes, the parceling of 43 properties and, you know, small mansions on them? Are they even close to the required ratios for defensible space? I don't know that. And someone should work on that for us, you know. And I'm totally flabbergasted that we have an MOU and the procedures aren't exactly followed. You know, you guys are setting yourself up for a major halt to this program, period. You know, you guys are shortchanging the residents over here and sliding something quick through. Now, whether you intend to do that or not, who knows? But that's something that, you know, the appearance is very important. And then coupled with that, the lack of transparency that I'm hearing is like totally, you know, unacceptable.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yao.
Okay, I just want to say one more thing. I like the town. You know, I've been here since mid-'80s. I don't know how many of you guys have been here since that time. I've seen a lot of changes. Some of it to the good, not always. But as long as it doesn't infringe upon our rights too much, then I'm okay with it. There's one thing that I'm kind of serious about. I haven't attended this, but in the beginning of a session, do we pledge allegiance to the flag? Is that something that you guys do, or is that something that is foregone nowadays?
Yeah, well, thank you. No, we don't.
I do like an answer for that one.
No, we do not.
You do not?
No.
Well.
Thank you.
Well, we should. Sorry.
Thank you. Again, Alex Arietta again. First of all, my respect to the commissioner, fire commissioner. I have a lot of respect for firemen, women, and our police officers. A good friend of mine is a retired fire captain, so a lot of respect there for the work that they do. One point of clarity and one point of reiteration. I think Susan made a really important point around the new safety element policies in the EIR for the updated general plan housing element say the metals is in the very high fire severity zone. Avoid expanding development into undeveloped areas in very high fire severity zones. It goes without saying that why are we even considering this when this is already part of the general plan? And it's very commonsensical. So I wanted that to sink in. I wanted to reiterate that because it's very basic, it's very fundamental, but it's very critical. And I hope that all of you are seriously considering it. I also wanted to kind of state some additional facts. The fire commissioner shared some very important facts of what the housing will be composed of. Some other important facts from 2020, there were 9,639 fires. There were 10,488 homes lost to wildfire in California. Many of those homes comprise the very same materials that the fire commissioner just outlined that these new homes would be comprised of. San Diego County in 2020, through prudent city council and planning commission actions and our lawsuits, rejected 10 proposed housing developments in very high-risk fire zones. Okay, so a lot of your counterparts, across California are having to face the very same tough decisions, and they're making the right calls because they're taking a long-term view towards public safety. The Caldor fire currently is 20% contained. 500 homes have already been destroyed just a few hours up north from us. Again, homes that were comprised of the same type of fire retardant materials that New Urban West is proposing that these homes will be built of. One question is if alternative designs were made, i.e. one building, smaller building, that's reasonable in scope, those buildings are comprised of steel. Those buildings are comprised of fundamentally different materials. So there is a material difference in a choice that could result in whether something goes up in flames or whether something doesn't. These are very important considerations. One point of clarity, last summer during the Bobcat fire when portions of Sierra Madre were evacuated, I live right up against the monastery. There was a helicopter that landed, okay? And so that field has been used. That was the only one I'm aware of, and I've been here for almost 5 years. But that is factual. So to me, it makes no sense to build in a very high-risk fire zone. Very fundamental, very basic, but very critical that the Planning Commission seriously consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Wendy Thermos. I live at 420 Grove Street. I've owned a home there for 28 years. I'd like to second virtually all the comments that have been made. I too am wondering why we are forging ahead sort of lithely going forward when it's already been determined that this is in a very high fire danger zone. It just seems to go against common sense. And I'd also like to underscore what gentleman just said that may have gotten lost in the ether, but it's already being pointed out that the Caldor fire and other fires, a large percentage of those homes were fire resistant. And it doesn't really do any good when these firestorms happen. My house has almost burned down a couple times. I live up on Grove. And when the winds start going, those fires are unstoppable, and fire resistant really means nothing. Lastly, I'd like to say the problem isn't just that the state's on fire right now, and it has been for the last several years, but that's a relatively short period of time. It's that fire managers are routinely warning us that this extreme wildfire threat is here for the foreseeable future, and there's no getting away from it. And I second those who say it's a really bad idea to approve more residences in the highest risk area, which is right up against the forest without any real buffer zone. Right now we have a buffer zone. We have the Bailey Canyon Dam stopped the fire in 1993, literally stopped the fire. But these would be beyond that, and I just think that's folly. Thank you very much. And I want to thank the fire chief for his very detailed presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, or can we move on to the next subject? No, I guess we'll move on.
I would like to thank the
the
fire chief for his report today.
Go ahead.
Thanks,
also,
Chief.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for the chief from the commission? Peggy? No? Okay. All right, then we'll move on to the next presentation. Are you ready?
Thank you, Chair, Bethner, and Commission. So my presentation, I'm going to cover our water supply portfolio, some of the investments we've made in our water system. I'll talk a little bit about the drought, some of our demand reduction measures, the project, and a quick note on the moratorium. Next slide. So first thing I'd like to talk about is our water portfolio. So we extract our water from the Raymond Basin in what's known as the Santa Anita sub-area or the Eastern Unit. It's called either one. We have what's called salvage credits. So the city owns the rights to some of the water that gets stored behind Santa Anita Dam and some of the water that's released from behind our local dam. We have access to the West Tunnel, which is not part of the Raymond Basin, so it doesn't count against our adjudicated rights. We also get water from, we are a member agency of the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District. As members of the district, we're entitled to receive supplemental imported water from the district. We started receiving water from the district in 2014 for the first time. And we are also party to the main San Gabriel Basin. Next slide, please. So this image is an image of the Raymond Basin and our adjudicated right. So our pumping rights from the Raymond Basin are 1,764 acre feet. Over time, we've accumulated 9,505 acre feet of salvage credit. That's water that we've diverted from Santa Anita, from behind Santa Anita Dam and our local dam. We spread that water in our spreading basins over at City Yard. We have about 20 acres of dedicated land for just groundwater replenishment. Again, the West Tunnel does not count against our adjudicated right. So when hydrologic conditions are correct or are right, and this is when water levels are above 500 feet mean sea level, our total available water would be 11,269 acre feet as of today. And that's about 470% of our 10-year average of that we normally produce about 2,387 acre feet. So when we look at that map below, you see on the right-hand side, I know it's really small, you have that light blue and that green. That area there, the green line on the bottom, that's the Raymond Fault. The line up on top is the Sierra Madre Fault. And then there's a little river that flows down, that's the Eaton Canyon Fault. And that's kind of what defines our aquifer. And a little bit to the right of that, there's an arbitrary line, and that's our management zone, where only the city of Arcadia and the city of Sierra Madre have wells, and that's where we pump our water from. We're the only two producers that pump water out of that portion of the basin. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the 500-foot rule. So the 500-foot rule is put in to protect neighboring aquifers. So we have our aquifer, and then to the west is the main Raymond Basin. And so when water levels drop below 500 feet, our pumping gets reduced to 940 acre feet. And that's to prevent water from that basin to spill over into our basin. So they want to keep the water levels at a place where one is not spilling into the other. So we're in that current hydrologic condition now, where the water level is below that 500-foot mark. We still have full access to the West Tunnel, and the West Tunnel will produce anywhere between 25 gallons per minute up to 250 gallons per minute, and that equates to anywhere between 30 acre feet and a little bit over 250 acre feet per year.
For the audience, this is the West Tunnel, which is behind Little Santa Anita Dam that goes horizontally into the mountain.
It goes horizontally into the mountain about 150 feet, then doglegs to the left about another 150 feet.
And it is solely inside the city of Sierra Madre, and it takes the water from the mountain behind us and brings it down into our water system.
Right. So that is 100% gravity fed. That water it doesn't cost us, the only thing it costs us to produce that water and introduce it into our system is water treatment. So it's very minimal cost. There's been years where we can supply the middle portion of town on 100% spring water when we have after a couple of good years of rain. And in fact, Southern California Edison has come to check our water meters, our electric meters, because there's no electric production to supply that portion of town.
But that's not to be confused with the water tunnel that comes from Big Santa Anita down to our settling basins.
Correct.
Okay.
So in addition to the west tunnel, our salvage credits, when we're in this condition, the 500, what we call the 500-foot rule, our salvage credits are frozen, and they've been frozen since 2014. So we continue to accumulate that water, but we don't have access to it. What we do have is we have access to 2,500 acre-feet of imported water from the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District. So when we add the 2,500 acre-feet from the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District and the 940 acre-feet of our adjudicated right, we come up with 3,400 acre-feet, and that does not include the west tunnel, and that's 144% of our 10-year average. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we are a party to the main San Gabriel Basin, and as a party to the main San Gabriel Basin, we can pump water, and our only limitation is the infrastructure to get that water to Sierra Madre. Currently, we don't have any infrastructure in the main basin. When we established the MWD San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District connection to bring in water, it was originally established as an emergency connection. And we determined that Sierra Madre was going to need a long-term sustainable water source. And working with our water district, the best option, the best long-term option would be to put a well in the main San Gabriel Basin and pump water from the main basin to Sierra Madre. So to do that, we would have to drill a well that would cost about $3 million. We'd have to buy property in Arcadia, another couple $1 million, and then we'd have to build the infrastructure, $12 to $15 million. So that was going to be about a $20 million project. So it didn't make a lot of economic sense. The second alternative was to continue to use that MWD district connection. And so our district negotiated with MWD to lift that emergency clause and make it a long-term, sustainable, reliable water source for the city of Sierra Madre. So now we have access to that in perpetuity, and it's no longer referred to as emergency in any way, shape, or form. So we talk about not having access to the main basin. In the last couple of years, the city of Sierra Madre has entered into an agreement, actually last year, with the city of Arcadia. The city of Arcadia was interested in drilling a well in the main basin. Working with the city of Arcadia, we agreed to split the cost of drilling a well in the main basin and splitting the cost or splitting the production of the well. 50%. We split the cost 50% for construction of the well, and we get half of the production of the well. It's estimated that well is going to produce 2,000 gallons per minute, and Sierra Madre is going to have access to 1,000 gallons per minute. So we will, hopefully in 2 years, we've already had the kickoff meeting. The well's been designed, it's been sited, and it's been engineered, and hopefully in the next 2 years, Sierra Madre will have its own straw in the main San Gabriel Basin and the ability to deliver water from another aquifer. Next slide, please. So when we look back, 2013, we produced water from the Raymond Basin. We had our salvage credits, and we had West Tunnel water. And we talk about investments to protect Sierra Madre, not to drought-proof, but to help us manage our way through droughts. I don't think that you can drought-proof anything, but you can improve your situation to make sure that those effects are going to be minimized. And so, again, we have the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District and that connection that we can rely on. And we have the Sierra Madre Arcadia joint well that will hopefully come on here in the next 2 years. Next slide, please. So a little bit on the of drought update. So by executive order, the governor has issued a 15% voluntary water conservation mandate. It's my feeling that that's going to become, it's no longer going to be voluntary, it's going to be required, and it might even go up, regardless of our water situation. We have the water to meet our community, 100% of our community's demand, but we still are part of California. It's a resource that needs to be protected, and if the governor issues a mandate, we're going to follow, and our community is going to have to reduce by 15%, maybe even more. We're in a second year of a drought, and this drought's a lot different than the drought, the 2011 to 2017 historic drought, the worst drought in California's recorded history. And it's a lot different this time around, and we've learned a lot, and we continue to learn about drought. And the main difference about this, with this drought, was in 2011 to 2017, that drought affected the Sierra watershed, the mountains along the Sierra Nevada mountain range. And that water, that's the mountain range that gets water from Northern California and brings it down to Southern California and for farm ag. What we're seeing with this drought is that it's affected the Sierra Nevada mountain range, and it's also affected the Colorado Basin watershed. So both systems have been impacted, the Colorado River and the Sierras. Again, Sierra Madre, the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District, the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District's partners in Metropolitan Water District have made significant investments to make sure that their customers the impact is minimal. And again, nobody's drought proof in anything, but the impacts with the investments that we made, we feel that are going to be less than had we not made these investments. Next slide, please. In addition, California Code now requires us to do a water assessment every year. City Council is going to be informed of our water supply conditions at a City Council meeting. The community is going to know where we are on our water supply. And we'll have to submit those findings to the Department of Water Resources by July 1st of each year. We just completed our urban water management plan. Our urban water management plan did an assessment of our water supply and our infrastructure, and determined that the City of Sierra Madre is in a position to manage its way through a 1-year drought up to a 5-year drought. It studied up to a 5-year drought. Again, it doesn't mean that there isn't any demand reduction in that period, but the City of Sierra Madre has the resources to get through up to a 5-year drought. That's as much as was studied in this urban water management plan. The urban management plan spells out specific demand reductions. It has conservation recommendations and specific demand reductions with different trigger points. Our current mandatory water conservation plan has a moratorium built into it when our supplies are cut by 30%. It's not the first option, but when water supply is cut by 30%, a moratorium is an option. That will remain as part of our water conservation plan. Next slide, please. So now I want to talk a little bit about the proposed project. So according to SCAG, the City of Sierra Madre has 3.5 occupants per dwelling unit. And from our last study, that rate study, it was determined that we use 55 gallons per person per day. So when we factor 3.5 occupants by 55 gallons, it comes out to 9 acre feet of water for indoor use for that proposed project. So it's just over 0.25% of our total production. So about 27.27% of our total production. When we look at our per capita use, which is 199 gallons per person per day, and factor it by the same metrics, we come up with indoor-outdoor use for 42 units of 32 acre feet per year. That's less than 1% of our total production. When somebody asks me, is this project going to impact our water supply? It's not going to impact our water supply. If drought conditions exist, it's going to be with or without this project. We're going to have to conserve with or without the project. We're talking about 32 acre feet of water out of 3,287. Like I said, it's just 1% of our total water supply. Next slide, please. This project introduced a concept we refer to as net zero. The developer has agreed to pay for 50 years of water for this project. So taking in metrics that we talked about earlier, they will provide the city with a lump sum amount for the city to either purchase supplemental water when and if that water is available from our water district. We would store it in the main San Gabriel Basin, and it would be for general benefit of the community. It's not specifically for that development. It's 50 years worth of water for the general benefit of the entire community. They will still pay their normal water bill just like everybody else. So we would store that water in the main San Gabriel Basin where we have storage rights, and then we would be able to pump that water to the city of Sierra Madre with our new well. Next slide, please. Again, I mentioned this earlier. We will continue to have a moratorium as one of the tools in our chest as for water conservation. The state has introduced Government Code 66300, which prohibits the city from issuing a moratorium specifically to limit development. So that will be something that we will have to work around when we get to that point. It's just another challenge that the state has put on municipalities to issue a moratorium. Next slide. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you. Questions from the commission?
So on that last slide about moratorium, regardless of the hitting a 30% number, the moratorium is not a tool in our chest anymore now that state code has been changed.
So Attorney Rogosian maybe can answer that question.
So if we hit that 30% number, then we would go to the state and say, we need a moratorium because we're running out of water. And then we'd have to enter into negotiations with HCD so that they grant that moratorium. But we would have to take that additional step. We couldn't just adopt the moratorium once we hit the 30%.
And is it safe to say that HCD would be receiving that request from everybody who?
Right. Yeah, before us, for sure.
Yeah.
Jose, each one of these buildings will be required to catch all the water that falls on the building itself and store it underground?
So with the lead, they are required to catch a certain percentage of the first rain, so they will have encatchments, and the goal is to keep all the water on the property. Of course, depending on how long, if we have a long storm, that's not possible, but they are designed to capture a certain percentage of the first rainfalls, yes.
And they can't be built without that?
Correct.
And that lead policy is a state law. That's not.
That is correct.
Something that's going to be overridden in a specific plan.
Another point of clarification, the term that you talked about in salvage, that's the water that's currently going through the canyon now in the flood control, and it gets down to a point where you can divert it and put it onto we can divert it and put it out into our settling basin. There's a little diversion if the public hasn't been there. And that water, even if you go down now, there's water that goes through the flood control basin down through Arcadia. But 10% of that gets diverted up at a certain point so it can be put into the ground in Sierra Madre.
So at Camilo, we have what we refer to as the Camilo Gate, and that's where the water gets diverted from what we call Little Santa Anita Dam to our spreading basins. And we divert anywhere between half an acre foot to an acre foot of water per day, depending on how much water is being produced. There's 2 tunnels. There's 2 natural springs, one on each side of the dam. The west tunnel, we call the west tunnel, that one's approved for potable use. The east tunnel is not. The east tunnel gets 100% of it gets diverted and spread into our spreading basins.
I'm trying to understand the 50-year in advance buying of water. So if they buy water, they're buying it up front, and we're storing it in our available space in the San Gabriel Basin. Will that keep us from presenting as a 30% need for a moratorium?
So they're going to provide the funding The water has to be available for purchase. Right now, that water would not be available for purchase. So we would have two options. We can hold that money, and when the water's available, we purchase the water, or we can invest that money to improve our infrastructure. Currently, we have about 12% water loss. So if we invest in our water infrastructure to further reduce water loss, we can use the money to do that, to bring, every percentage that we bring down is going to be more water that's available for the city. So we have a couple of options, but yes. So option number one would be to purchase that water when it's available, store it in the main San Gabriel Basin. If the state issues water conservation mandates, then we have to abide by those mandates, regardless of our water situation. So we would be impacted, or we would reduce if our water supply was impacted. And so that would be by, if our wells are impacted, or the ability to import water, or the ability to pump water from the main basin. So if any of those are impacted, then we would say our sources have been impacted by 10%. These are the demand reduction measures that the city has, that the residents have to do, and then 20%, 30%, 40%. So depending on where we are, different triggers would kick in.
Okay, so it seems like the most, as you mentioned, the most viable thing would be to correct the constantly leaking streets around town.
Right.
I think everyone's seen them. So that's where the money went, then we wouldn't be buying any extra water.
So we budget a little bit over, somewhere between $1 and $1.5 million per year for water main replacement. The San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District offered its member agencies a zero-interest loan. Our council approved, accepted a loan from the district for $2.7 million over 10 years, zero interest. We plan to use that money in addition to the $1 million to $1.5 million that we budget for water main replacements. Since 2017, our water loss was over 25%. We're down to about 12%. Our goal is to get down below 8%. Of course, in the first few years, we went after the biggest leaking pipes, and we still have, I was speaking to interim Utilities Director McGee, and he informed me on Wednesday that we still had 60 leaks this month. And if you do that for the year, we still have a significant amount of leaks. So every pipe that we replace is going to save water. All the water that we save means that there's more available water for us to pump out. When I talk about investments and belonging to the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District, another key investment that our district is participating in is in Carson. They're building a gray water treatment plant where they're going to treat the water, and then they're going to pump it back up. And while the pipeline is not going to reach the city of Sierra Madre, there's 4 member agencies. There's the city of Sierra Madre, the city of Azusa, the city of Monterey Park, and the city of Alhambra. Both the city of Alhambra and the city of Monterey Park have golf courses. They're all members of San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District and all entitled to receive supplemental water. So any water that they can get that's reclaimed water, that's treated, and they can use to irrigate their golf courses and medians and parks is more water that's going to be available for the 4 member agencies. So when we talk about investments, it's not just investments here, and it's a partnership, and it's multiple agencies involved in water resource management to make sure that the future needs of our community are met.
I'm going to just partner on that, a little bit of that question. Some of what we're doing right now is we're replacing the pipes in the town in a methodical way. That's already been funded, hasn't it? So some of this 50-year money really would be put in another account for future leaks and other maintenance and water purchases, correct?
So you're correct. So with that money, we do have budgeted, and we're limited to how much we can accomplish in a year. So $1 million buys us about a mile's worth of pipe, and a mile's worth of pipe takes about 3 to 4 months to complete from start to finish. And typically, we want to get the pipe in the ground before October or November, because if we enter the rain season, then we have delays, and it could be a mess. This year, we're going to try to get 2 projects in. because we have a regularly funded, our funded program of $1.5 million, and we're gonna attempt to get another program in with another mainline replacement program with district loan funding. So our goal is to get a little bit over 2 miles of pipe this year. It's an ambitious goal, but I think we're gonna be able to meet that goal.
Okay, because I mean, we had a whole consultant with the city, as I recall, and that's why our meter rates changed. Then we have a base meter rate because it was diminishing returns when people are told to conserve, and some people did such a good job, the revenues decreased, and then we had the fines, and so we eliminated that so that we could just have a renewable, a system that would renew itself, correct? I mean, that's whole, the plan going forward, I hope.
So in our new rate structure that was adopted, in the past, infrastructure was built into the rate. And so what we wanted to, for transparency, for the residents to know, there's an infrastructure charge that's taken out and separate on your bill.
Right.
So that's how we get the $1 million to $1.5 million to make those investments. So when you see that infrastructure charge and you see the water mains going in front of your street, that's the money that's going into that.
Right, right. So, but in 10 years, let's say we've repiped the whole, and we're down to this 8% level, we'll still be accruing that maintenance money, correct?
So we'll have maintenance, we won't necessarily be
that portion,
generating $1.5 million.
Right.
So we did a water system master plan that identified, these are the pipes that you need to replace. So we're in the process now of developing a new water system master plan that says, okay, the next 5 years, this is what you have to replace to get yourself down to below 10%. And this is the other aging infrastructure that you have to make sure that you take care of so that you can boost water from the treatment plant to the different areas of the community. So aside from water mains, we have 2 main pump houses that we have to take care of. We have 4 wells, we have the tunnels. So there's a lot of infrastructure aside from water main. And a lot of our infrastructure was put in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And so we want to make sure that stuff is regularly serviced and replaced so that we can have that reliable source of water.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more question.
Okay.
This is all very interesting. It's a little bit out of the planning commission's purview, but closer to what we deal with. Individual gray water systems per house, I gather a little expensive, but it seems like that would be very helpful. Is something the planning commission might propose as a requirement to help the city, or I don't know.
I'm glad you bring that up, and I can thank Councilmember Parkhurst in part. We are developing and updating our water conservation program, and we're hoping to debut it at the September 28th council meeting. And one of the things that we're working on is introducing to the community what we're calling laundry to landscape, where it would be a diverter valve that gets installed on the effluent of your clothes washer, and you can divert that water to your garden, and so that would be an example of a gray water system for the city of Sierra Madre. So we're really excited about some of the programs that we're going to be bringing to the community, and again, we're hoping to bring that to council on September 28th.
Great, thank you.
Mr. President, may I ask
Yep.
just one question?
Sure.
So, Director Reynoso, or Interim City Manager Reynoso, what is the lifetime of a pipe in this city?
So we have an array of pipe material. Some of it is riveted steel mains, and when I say riveted steel mains, I mean they took flat metal, rolled it, and put rivets in it. And that pipe is probably from the 20s and 30s and has exceeded its lifespan probably by 20 or 30 years. We have steel mains that are unlined, that have been in the ground probably 60, 70 years, and because they're unlined, they rust and internally, and because they're in contact with the soil and moisture, they rust from the outside, so they rust probably twice as fast as any pipe that we have in the ground. So those pipes, even though they've been installed in the 50s and 60s, probably have exceeded their useful life. Some of our areas have over 100 pounds of pressure. When you couple that with the age of the pipe and the material of the pipe, the age of the lifespan of the pipe gets accelerated. Currently, we use two different pipe materials. We use ductile iron pipe, and it has a life expectancy of 100 years. It has a thin coating of cement on the inside to protect the iron from corrosion. The other product that we use is C900 or C909, and it's a like a plastic composite pipe, and that pipe also has a 100-year lifespan. So depending on availability, right now materials are really scarce, really hard to get. The last mainline project, we started with the C909, and we had to end the project with ductile iron pipe because there was no C909 available.
So if we continue at the current rate, when will we replace all of the pipes in the city?
So if my memory serves me right, we have about 42 miles of pipe, and that doesn't mean that all of it has to be replaced. So our current water system master plan takes us to 2022, and again, we'd complete a new water system master plan to identify the other areas. I think the last time we looked at what it would take to replace all the pipes or all the pipes that were in decay was something over $25 million.
Okay. So 25 years if we do $1 million. Okay, thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Great, all right. The public wants to come up, make a comment, or ask questions, we'll.
Yeah, do we need to go up here to ask
Yes,
a question?
yeah, please.
David Beach, I live up on Auburn. Who does the St. Gabriel Water District, where do they get their water?
Oh, what I want you to, you can make comments and then ask some questions, and then we'll formulate the questions back to
Okay.
to them.
All right, on the water, it seems to me, because we talked about drilling a new well, and all this is kind of quick, because it's the first time I've heard it, that I don't know how much water is going to be in that new well that's proposed to drill with Arcadia, how long that's going to last. We talk about water coming from these tunnels. We just went through a 6-year drought. We're going through a worse drought as you just presented. So I don't know how much water is going to continue coming from these tunnels. If you go before the fire, when we'd hike up there, streams and springs were all dry from what they've been in the past. So I question how much that's going to be. The cost of water in our town is outrageous. I pay $200 a month before I do anything for the line that was built connecting my house out there, which has nothing to do with how much water I use. So people in the city can only pay so much money for water. The statistics, if I understood them, that you put up on one of your slides, said estimated 3.5 occupants for each of these houses. And they would be using the amount of water that I take it that you use from the average use in our town, 55 gallons, I think it was. I don't think anybody buying a $3 to $4 million house is going to have 3.5 residents. I think it's going to be substantially higher than that. And the water use for those would probably be substantially higher too. So I would, ask you to go back, sharpen your pencil, and do some on those estimates. As far as, buying 50 years of water, those calculations go out there. And so you'd have to look at your calculations, how much water they're using, how much water these people are going to purchase, if it's available. Because if I look at, so going back to my question, where we buy our water from, where are they getting their water? On these things, would be a question. Other thing is, it seems that management in the city seems to be working very hard to find a way for this thing to get done. I'm not sure that's is the proper approach. I would question that. And essentially, and also considering that the vast majority of residents of this town are very much against this project. And that's all I've got.
Thank you. Anyone else want to talk about water, or? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm concerned about the net zero feature as well, because since March of this year, that's been a big pitching point of New Urban West. Net zero water, right? And yet we just heard you say that they can give us $10 million or $20 million to buy 50 years worth of water. The water's not available. So, but that was a small detail that New Urban West did not mention at all since March when they started making these presentations. Yeah, they'll pay for the water, but it really doesn't matter because the water's not there. And I think that's an important fact, important detail that has been omitted. And I agree that with $3 or $4 million homes, the average residency is going to be more than 3.5. So I think that's vastly understated in terms of what that utilization is actually going to be. And yeah, there is also no reference to, I think your slide said internal use. I'm not sure if that includes external use, i.e. ADUs, pools, landscaping, and such. And if it doesn't, which I think from your slide it appears it doesn't include, that's additional underestimating that is factored into those numbers that were presented. So I echo the comment. It seems like the city and city staff is working very, very hard, whether it's on water or whether it's on other key issues of this project, to work very, very closely with the developer to try to smooth over these pretty big material issues, including water. And we haven't spoke about traffic. I'm not sure if that's on the agenda still for tonight. But
No, it's not.
okay, that's a singular big issue as well. But residents are strongly opposed to this project, and I think that water is just one reason. But it goes to the other issues that we've spoken about tonight as well around fire. Then the last point is 50 years. Okay, I mean, frankly, people are living a lot longer than 50 years, and people are living in their homes for a lot longer than 50 years. And so even that factor is underestimated. So I think there's a number of things that have been said, have been communicated to try to say nice terms, public, if they're not informed, if they're not clear on what the facts are, some of the questions, pertinent questions to ask, they hear net zero and they think, must be okay. And they're not scratching underneath, right? But that is not realistic. If the water's not available, who cares? And it shouldn't be included in their marketing features, but it is. That's been emblematic of how they have approached this project. And frankly, how some of the city staff has been complicit with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Pevner,
Yes, yeah.
Before the list gets too long, would it be fine if I address?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to answer in between, so we have a couple of questions, that's great. Mr. Yao, could you just wait 1 second? We're going to let Mr. Reynoso.
So the first question is, where does our water district get its water? Our water district is what's known as a contractor to the state water project. And so they have a contract for a certain percentage of water or a certain allotment of water, and it's between 26 and 28,000 acre feet per year. And depending on snowpack, the state will issue a different allocation every year. The allocation can be as low as 5%, or it could be as high as 80%. And we've had years where it's been 5%, and we've had years where we've had 80%. And so that's where our district gets its main source. The district also has works on agreements with farmers in the Central Valley that choose not to grow crops and sell their water rights. So they buy water on the open market, and that water's a lot more expensive than the $200 per acre foot that the district gets when they bring water through their contract. That water can cost up to 1,000 acre feet. The district has capital saved in case they need to make that purchase of water, to make that water available. The city's water rate that we pay is, for the city of Sierra Madre right now, is $400 per acre foot. The district charges $200 an acre foot, but our agreement is for every acre foot that we take, we have to pay for 2, so our cost is $400 per acre foot. So those are the two main sources that our water district gets water from their contract with the state water project. and second, buying water on the open market from parties that want to sell their water.
Okay.
They are also working with other districts to form a coalition to go after water together so that they can try to lower the cost of water and buy water in bulk and set that water aside, maybe even store it in the Central Valley and bring it down when it's needed.
And that comes, hang on a second. Yeah, no, I'm gonna let the next speaker, if I have time, I'll let you come back and ask another question, but just wait, go ahead.
So,
Continue.
the 199 gallons per capita per day, so what we do is we take our total water that we produce for the city and we divide it by the number of people in town. So that number is not estimated, it's an actual number of the water that we produce divided by the number of people in this town. And that's 199 gallons per day, and that's how we came up with the 32 acre feet. The statement that we're working to make water available for this developer, I came to work for the city of Sierra Madre in 2011. We had, like I said, 3 water sources. We managed water almost day to day. And we took it upon ourselves to invest so that this community would not manage water day to day, would manage water for generations. I mean, that's something that we're really, really proud of. And it's not for a development, it's for this community. So I take exception to that statement that we're working for a developer. We're working for this community.
Okay.
So I think I've addressed or answered all the questions.
That's okay, we can circle back if we have other questions from it. Mr. Yap, go ahead.
Yes, Philip Yao, Syracuse. Just a couple of questions, again, being new to this. You know, where are the resources I can look for to understand the metrics involving water? Is there a site within, you know, the city of Sierra Madre.com that I can get that data? You know, secondly, I commend you. You mentioned that you have a plan for up to 5 years to combat even the current drought or the extended drought. Is that something that happens without any you know, conservation measures, such as what the state is voluntarily asking for, or perhaps even mandatory at some point? So is that plan that you have, does it involve any sacrificial usage, you know, I mean curtailing of usage? So I'd like to know that. And I think what I heard that you mentioned is with this plan that you have, and I might just be stretching it, you know, the understanding that we are not running a deficit of water. We have water. Is that correct? So when the state turns off and says, hey, we're part of the state and we wanted to do our part to conserve, what happens to that extra water? I mean, does it just sit there, or can we have credit to sell it, or it gets used, I think, typically. I mean, it's, unless we have big storage containers. So those are things that, you know, I know that the other participants are addressing the usage of water to the meadows, and generally we can't have a net zero if you're shown that there is usage. So it may be minimal usage, like you projected, but that's pretty conservative usage that I saw those numbers here. And I think the gentleman is right. When people are in big houses, they have a tendency to use more water. I don't know why, but that seems to be the trend. So yeah, I don't buy this net zero thing, but you know, I guess if you can show me the metrics, I can usually run some calcs pretty quick. I do want to thank you. You know, you are working on behalf of the city of Sierra Madre residents, so thank you for that. So whatever statements that, you know, you might have misconstrued on there, I don't think that people necessarily were pointing at you. I think systematically they're looking at a situation that we don't understand. So I don't think you want to, you know, take on that responsibility. But the fact is, I still think that there are some areas that we still don't understand. I don't understand. I'm pretty numbers driven, but I like to at least see the metrics, see the source data. Then you know, having a chance to verify that, I think, you know, we can say, you know, you're right or we disagree with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it on?
It's in the staff report, but it is not on the agenda. There's a schedule at the bottom. Well, yes, it's part of the staff report, which includes that discussion, but we included a timeline in the staff report that says it's to be determined.
Well, just avoid touching this, you won't have to wipe it so much.
Well, we're gonna have another, well,
We'll have another
Yes.
another study
Yeah.
session just for that.
that's fine. Yes,
Yes.
yes. That's the, yeah, I'm sorry. The purpose of these are educational, so we're not trying to rush things through. These are also, I just want to point out that this is all voluntary on our part. We don't have to do any of this. We're doing this at the behest of, and the good of the community. And because we, you know, not that, you know, there's been sort of some turmoil with the city council, so we, as an agency of that we think entails trust with the community, that's why we're trying to do this in an open forum, so that it's not even required of us. So you see that we're trying to be as transparent so that we can educate and let people not only find out what's going on, but also get their opinions out before we have to have the critical meetings, so we don't have some of the frustration that we've seen in the past. So.
And I understand that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just was unclear because it was on the agenda and I just wanted.
Correct. We're trying.
That part of the presentation.
Right. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Beach.
Let me clarify first. I'm not accusing any individual of working for the developer. My comment was, it's easy sometimes when you're working on a project to try to find a way for it to get done. I'm suggesting that you need to sometimes step back, think of these things. I've worked on many projects, and sometimes you gotta get this project done. Well, maybe that doesn't need to get done, or should get done. Going back to the water, so it's clear our water source is getting water from the Sierra, surrounding areas that don't need it, and we're facing the drought there. We know the Colorado River doesn't have any water. They're already draining reservoirs above Powell to bring water into there so they can still generate electric power. Lake Mead may not be able to do it. So I would suggest going back and putting a substantial discount in addition to what you've probably already done as to what our water looks like on these things, based on your comments so far.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you state your name, please?
David Beach.
Thank you.
All right.
Hi, my name's Todd Cranston Cuevas. I just have a quick question. You mentioned that, like our water bills, they typically include the cost of the water itself, as well as, is there a separate charge for the infrastructure? Is that also included with the 50 years that the developer is going to be paying ahead? Are they paying simply for the water, or are they also paying for the infrastructure charges that everybody else is paying with their bills?
Yeah, I'm going to let him accumulate some of these questions. We'll answer. Go ahead with your comments.
So I'm just wondering about that, because I don't know. The other thing is since we're not buying the water right up front right now, because we can't even if we wanted to, was there, and basically beyond just a typical inflation factor, was there also some kind of a factor built into this 50-year payment plan that included the fact that the cost of water is probably going to go up fairly dramatically over the next 50 years? Because again, we're having more and more difficulty getting water in the first place. So was there any form of compounding additional cost over a 50-year lifespan built into that payment?
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Should we answer some of the questions?
Let's one more and then we'll stop. And then, yeah. I don't want to load you up too much, but you let me know when you go ahead.
I really came to talk traffic, and so if we're not doing traffic, I'm going to politely say thank you for your time. It's been very interesting to watch how this has been working versus the city council meeting, which was packed with people. But I appreciate this because you're asking good questions, you're listening to us, and so I will come the next time you talk traffic. I would imagine, is that in 2 weeks?
That's to be determined at this point.
Yeah, well,
How will we find out when that happens?
It'll be on our, if you just keep an eye on our planning commission meetings, it's generally posted on our agenda. We can also make an announcement the 2 weeks prior at the planning commission meeting that item will be on the agenda.
But this wouldn't be 2 weeks prior to the next planning commission meeting?
No.
Tonight?
No.
So,
We have other items on the agenda that we have to move forward with, so that's why this one had to be delayed. We wanted to spend extra time on traffic and circulation issues as a standalone meeting as much as possible.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sheriff Petzner?
Yes,
Would
go.
it be fine if I answered some of the questions?
Yeah, can you wait just a minute so he can answer, because I don't want to load him up with too many things. Go ahead.
One of the questions was, where can we get data? So the Raymond Basin Management Board monitors how much water we produce. We submit a monthly report to them, and we're required to submit how much water we produce, how much hours of energy are used to produce that water. We're required to have our production meters tested annually. Then they compile a annual report, and that report is made available through the Raymond Basin, and I believe the website is raymondbasin.org, and you can download that report, that annual report, and it has all of our production data monthly available on that report. The Urban Water Management Plan is a long-term managing plan for water sustainability. Every water agency is required to produce one, and every 5 years, so it gets updated. Even though it's a long-term, it gets updated every 5 years because things change rapidly. So that plan gets updated every 5 years. So water that gets, the net zero water is just the cost of water. The residents that live there will pay the impact fee as part of their delivery, but the pre-purchase of water is just for the water, does not include an impact fee. The homes that are gonna be built, and we're gonna make sure that they are the most efficient homes, that all of their fixtures are low water use, low water produced toilets, low water shower heads. They're gonna be designed to be the most efficient, not just in water, but every utility that goes into those properties. I think that's it.
How about the cost of the 50-year water? I mean, what it's going to cost in 50 years? That number is kind of.
Alex, can you, City Attorney, can you help with that? Was there any factor for the purchase price of the water escalating factor for?
I don't think there was. No, I don't think so.
So it's a set fee that just sort of like our parking fee kind of thing. You put some money on deposit and then you use it, and when it's okay, and they make an estimate. Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Please.
Wendy Thermos, 420 Grove Street. In talking with my neighbors, reading comments online about this project, one thing that keeps coming up over and over seems to be that people aren't buying into the argument that this is a net zero project, and that seems to be a misnomer to many people, including me. I do want to say that new development, this is just common sense, I think. New development should not be approved in Sierra Madre while the rest of us are being told there's not enough water to go around. I I lost track of all the numbers that the gentleman was giving about how it just started sounding like we're flush with water or something. I don't know what the real picture is. Plain and simple, every month, a note at the bottom of my water bill tells me I'm allowed to water my yard only on certain days due to the water shortage. So there's a water shortage, and if there's a misunderstanding or, you know, I think you're contributing to a misunderstanding when you put some of those numbers up there. In fairness to the rest of us, the city should not okay this project until we have, including the Planning Commission, shouldn't okay this project until we have enough water to remove that order. I'm not asking for a moratorium. You have to issue water permits to each and every one of these projects, and you do not have to issue the permit if there isn't enough water. If the drought, and the city attorney should be aware of this, I spend a good chunk of my year, a good chunk of my life before I ever moved to Sierra Madre studying water issues, being in and around planning commissions, city councils. I've read over 100 EIRs. This is really shameful if people are buying into this, I think. The nicest thing I can say about this net zero water usage claim is that it's a snow job. I don't know how else to say it. I'm trying to be nice here. If the drought turns out to be a short-lived crisis, say you know, suddenly things change, you know, I don't think that's going to happen. But let's just say it turned out to be a short-lived crisis. Madre Dolorosa and the developer shouldn't mind waiting a bit. But all indications are this is not short-term, it's worsening. And if it's not a short-term problem, you can draw your own conclusions about that. It doesn't take any brains. I really hope that these numbers are going to be looked at harder. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. If no one else,
There's a couple of questions.
you want to, sort of. address
So
some of the
she is
concerns.
correct. Every water bill says that you have 2 days to water. And one of the things that we have to remember is that water is probably our most precious natural resource that we have in Sierra Madre. And it doesn't take much to remember 2013 when we were in the middle of that drought and we had those mandatory water conservations. So we don't take that light. And when we look at surrounding communities that say you have to wait for a 10% reduction in water to implement water conservation, that's not our approach in Sierra Madre. If your lawn can survive with 2 days worth of watering, that's all you need. If somebody's watering their driveway, even if we have 150% of the water that we need, that should bother you. We shouldn't do that. We shouldn't waste that resource just because we have it. If you go to a restaurant and if they serve you water without asking, that should bother you, because if people don't drink it, that's a waste of that resource. So we take water use very serious. Even though we're in a current supply condition where we can meet the community's needs, we have to treat it like it's precious and we're not going to waste it. And so we limited watering to 2 days a week because we know that lawns, you look around our lawns, if you water during the right times, where you give that water the opportunity to soak into the root zone, not water in the middle of the day, not water when it's windy, you can maintain your garden. So the message is not that we have this abundant supply of water. We have the water to meet the community's needs, but we have to protect it and we have to manage it properly to make sure that we can manage this for the long term.
Look around
I think that's
town.
it. Excuse me?
How many, our cost of water in this town, every time I have a new neighbor that.
Excuse
they go,
me.
Oh my God, my water bill.
Excuse me, Mr. Beach? Okay,
Yes.
I'll give you a moment, but I want to make
Okay,
sure
no
Mr.
problem.
Reynoso finishes.
I just want to make sure I addressed all her questions, because there was a couple of comments, but I just want to make sure I addressed her questions.
I would just say, and it's not criticism on you, but if you look at after 2014, how many dead lawns, dirt lawns do you see in this town on people that can't afford water now? So that's dead. Trees are dying, which, for the climate activist, trees are good things. We've got dead trees and everything all around because we don't have a lot of water. That's all you have to do is you look around. You don't have to look at the water bill to tell you we don't have enough water like we had. So that's certainly a consideration and a big concern of the residents. So
Thank you. All right, so looks like everybody spoke. If there's anybody else wants to, I think everybody that's here has actually talked, so you want, go ahead.
Good evening, Gary Bossio, 630 Fairview. I just have a question. We've talked about this net zero water impact, which a lot of the residents really don't believe it's going to be net zero impact. And we've talked about an amount of money that the developer is going to give the city up front. But what is that amount of money? Do we know? Is it 5 million? Is it 10 million? What is it? And will it suffice to protect the city and the city's water for 50 years? We need to find that out. I think that's an important issue, because we talk about this amount, but we don't know what that amount is. We need the residents to know what that amount is. That's my only comment or question.
Okay. Thank you.
by the way, thank you for letting us get all our comments.
Sure,
We appreciate that.
sure. Is that a question we can answer or should answer? I mean, go ahead.
So with net zero, what we do is we look at the SCAG numbers, and it says that there's 3.5 occupants per dwelling. We know that indoor water use is estimated at about 55 gallons per day. This development is going to have an irrigation plan, and so based on the irrigation demands, those factors will also be included, and then that will be multiplied to come up with the number of acre feet that each dwelling is going to come up. And using our existing data for what we know that we do is roughly 200 gallons per person per day, and that includes indoor and outdoor use. The projections are about 30 to 35 acre feet per year for the entire project. So that's the way it's going to be factored, using SCAG numbers for number of people per dwelling, factoring indoor use, and then calculating the outdoor use based on irrigation plans. We'll come up with a number, and then we'll multiply that by the 42 units times 50 years, and that's how we come up with the number.
Okay, so that'll translate into a dollar figure, but we don't have that yet.
Correct.
Okay.
And that assumes the cost of water at 2021, or does it project the cost of water over the lifetime of the contract?
That is the cost of water now.
Cost of water today?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is also based off of the usage today. So if the supposition that a drought is going to continue to be a condition, we would continue to impose less water usage.
No, the interesting thing about drought is what we'll see is this community responds really well, right? Everybody knows that we're in a condition, and when asked, they conserve. And so we'll see that in the first year, of the drought, there's not much of an impact. The second year, things start to die off a little bit. And what we see is that we don't have that winter rain to offset that usage. So we might see a little bit of a spike in use. And then, as things progress, then the community really starts to respond, and we start to see that water drop. This project is designed to be efficient landscaping, efficient indoors, so drought-tolerant plant materials designed to be used. And I think, and Director Gonzalez, it would probably be about 2 years before anything, if approved, would be built there.
Possibly even longer than that.
Possibly
yes.
even longer than that. So the fact that the water's not available now before the project is built, if we have a year that there's enough water. I mean, that's just, speculation, but, this is a couple years out before our system would be impacted.
Yeah, I guess what I was asking is, it sounds like there are concerns about the modeling from a perspective of underestimating the costs. But if droughts are going to continue, you've just said that we use less water during drought times. So unless you projected out a decrease in water usage because of drought years, you've overestimated the water usage.
That would be a correct assessment.
I'd also like to point out that as water usage drops, rates seem to go up, is my experience.
So we've adopted a water rate study. I think it's 5 years, and it has a cost of living escalator in there, but we can't raise rates without an approval of the community through the 218 process. So we would conduct a rate study, it would go to council, and then we would go through the 218 process where the community would vote to approve that rate increase. So you wouldn't see a rate increase just based on conservation. Our rate study does have a pass-through. If Edison raises their energy cost, that cost gets directly passed through to the customer. But there's no conservation pass-through measure that would kick in if we have to reduce water. So the way our rates are structured is you have a connection fee, and that pays for ongoing operations, and then you have the infrastructure charge that pays for the water main replacements and capital improvements, and then you have the commodity charge that pays for the water itself. So the city can continue to operate with the connection charge, continue to replace water pipes, and if conservation causes us to reduce water, that's the portion where the residents will see that their water bill go down because they're not using water. But the other two will remain constant, and the city will be able to continue to run the water department and make the investments.
So my question is that the net zero includes the infrastructure and connection fees as well as the material fee, the water fee. No, they're only going to pay for the water.
The net zero only pays for the water.
The cost of water. They will still pay for the development fee for building the initial infrastructure.
Correct.
Okay, so okay, all right.
And each connection will be subject to every charge that the residents get when they open their account.
Okay.
In addition to the pre-purchase of the water.
Okay.
It seems like the model for the price should include the study of the increase in water rates over the last 50 years. And as an example of how it might be projected forward. So.
Although, before we did the study and came up with this two-rate system, we had a graduated system which was very punitive, and I remember getting a bill one time for $1,200 because I had excessive usage, and then I got a forgiveness because I had a leak. So, and we went through that whole process, and that was the reason we did this whole study, was so that we avoided that, because I remember somebody up on one of the streets, they weren't even at the house and the pipe broke, and I think they got a penalty of like $6,000, which was
Well, I'm not talking about penalties, I'm just talking about basic.
right, but I'm just saying our previous structure, if you go back to the tier, even that tiered level was pretty outrageous, and the fee we're paying now is better. Most of it's built into the meter charge, right?
So our rate structure has 2 tiers, and what we do is, for example, right now we have 940 acre-feet of available groundwater, and we divide that water between every account in the city, every residential account in the city. So everybody gets that first allocation at the lowest cost, because that's our lowest cost water, is the water that we can produce locally. And tier 2 is anything you use in excess of our local supply is imported water supply, and the residents pay the fully burdened cost of importing and distributing that water. So that's how our two rate structure.
But if we go back too far, remember before when we had our own well water, the rates were really cheap, and that was one of the complaints, was that the rates went like this after we had the fourth-tiered structure, when we realized we were woefully behind in our maintenance and all these other things, and that was the purpose of the consultation, so, I mean, I wouldn't go back too far, Peggy.
Well, I'm just
I think she's talking about the
basic
cost
water
of
rate,
purchasing water,
just
not the
water.
cost to the residents. of
Well,
water.
no, I know, but I mean, if you go back to when we were pumping our own well, and we had plenty of water, it was dirt cheap. And so if you use that and amortize it, you might come up with a really low rate, might lower their fee, so, rather than
I'm
raise it.
talking modeling the increase over 50 years.
Oh, you want to amortize it, take that rate and see
use
what
it
it
as
would
a
be.
model of folded.
And use that as a
forward.
formula, oh, okay, well, I suppose that's one
Is,
looking at it.
is the,
Careful.
the cost to the developer, is that part of what would be finalized in the development agreement? And so it's not, it hasn't been determined yet?
The cost, the final cost of water has not been determined yet.
Okay. But just so we get a round number, you said that there's, 42 homes, and you said they're using 32 acre feet?
35.
You can say, I think it was 32 acre feet per year for the development.
Okay, per year. And you said that we're currently buying water at $400 an acre foot?
Correct.
And it's a 50-year program. So if you multiply 42 homes by 32 acre feet times $400 times 50 years, that would be a rough estimate?
So 32 times 50 times 400, right? 32 per year.
It's 32 per year for the entire?
The entire project, yes.
For the entire project?
Yes.
So this is less than $1 million that we're talking about?
Yeah, 600,000.
Yes.
That's about six, okay.
It's the actual cost of whatever the water costs.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so if we look at our typical residential house, we use a little bit, right around, let's just call it half an acre foot of water per resident. It's 42 residents that are gonna be proposed up there. Figure a half an acre foot of water or so. So that would be about 24. So the number that I gave you, 32, is a little bit higher. But when I factor in, if I take all the water that we produce in the city and divide it by every account, it's about 0.6 acre feet. But that includes parks, institutional, commercial, multifamily, and residential. When we look at residential alone, it's right around half an acre foot of water per resident.
And just so I'm clear on all of this, the developer is going to pay to put in every single piece of infrastructure to whatever our current standards are and tie into our existing water structure. And then the developer, or then the residents, once they move in, are going to pay every month a regular water bill.
Correct, and they will install the infrastructure, and if the tie-in point where they're gonna connect to ours needs improvement, they're gonna be required to improve that. We're not gonna allow them to connect to our infrastructure and cause problems in that section, so they're gonna be required to tie into what we consider that would be mainline that's in really good condition.
Could I have just one quick comment to that, real quick? I would suggest when you run your model out.
That would be the answer to that.
When you're running the model out on this thing, like based on our average usage, if you look around town, what's inevitable? If you just look up on Grandview, just east of Lima, it's a large house, which is fine, larger than what was there. So as people come in and buy up houses here and remodel them, bring them up to date, whatever, the water usage in those homes is going to really skew today's average up a lot higher. So I think our water usage per household is going to be substantially higher because we've got a lot of old, smaller places and all. So,
Thank you.
May I respond to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this just for the council? I'm sorry.
We're talking.
Is this now planning commission?
Yeah, listen, that's fine. I allow it. Go ahead, Peggy, since he brought it up. Go ahead.
The newer houses generally have much stricter water, as you were saying. The toilets, everything is much more restrictive on water usage, including the landscaping. So it's very likely that a newer house will use less than an existing older house.
Okay. Okay, no, that's no back and forth, please. I'm done. I'm done with the back and forth. Go ahead. That's okay. Okay, thank you. Well, Alex, did you want to say something? Oh, no.
Yes, Chair. So, Commissioner Spears just mentioned that this is in addition to the connection fee. So I just want to clarify that for everyone that's listening. Every development has to pay development impact fees upon construction. So one of the development impact fees are water-related development impact fees, and those include correct me if I'm wrong, interim city manager, it's what goes into the development impact fee for water. I think it's connection fee, the capacity charge, all that, right? For basically the water infrastructure.
Right.
So the water infrastructure, every development pays for that. This is totally separate. No development in the city pays for this. This is just going to be something borne by this developer. And for that reason, we're putting it in the development agreement, because this is a contractual thing between the city and the developer, in addition to whatever development impact fees they would have to pay under our municipal code.
Okay, thank you.
And for clarification, the development fee pays for the cost of the physical infrastructure that the city must install in order for the house to get their services, the municipal services.
The impact-
So
the
so it's not as if the general fund pays extra money so somebody can build a house.
Correct.
Whoever is building a new house pays the city the fee that it costs to bring the sewer line up, bring the water line up, bring whatever else, the other utilities to the house.
And the impact on the water system.
And the impact on the general system as a whole.
Yeah, it's pretty significant. Okay, great. Any other questions for?
I have a question, a couple questions actually. You have the per capita of the town as a number. Do you know what it is offhand?
So, interesting, so our target is 206 gallons per minute.
No,
I'm
just the
sorry.
number of people.
Oh, yes, 11,100.
11,100. And how many people do we expect to be at the new development?
So well, SCAG numbers say 3.5 people per dwelling times 42 units.
150? Thank you.
Nice
And
round
so
number.
what percentage of
I gave
the
it
11,000, something is 150 people? I'm just trying to figure out
Oh.
what percentage.
exactly the 1% that he's talking about.
Yeah.
It all factors.
So it all- it-
factors to 1%.
So the water usage matches the actual.
Right. So when we look at
So it's
42 units
1%.
divided by 3,800, it's 1.1%. When we look at the water, it's about 1%. Yeah, so it's
Okay.
it's pretty consistent.
Okay, thank you. It's a notably small number. So-
Any other questions or contributions from?
Oh, I have one more question.
Go ahead.
The state water district gives us an allocation, you said. How is the allocation determined? Is it by the number of people or the size, the area of the town, or?
So the district has just committed 2,500 acre feet to the city of Sierra Madre. That's Sierra Madre's approximate annual demand. When that emergency connection was established, we were on 100% district water for about a year. And so that was the commitment, and that's how we were able to maintain that.
No, the question is, how does the state district determine how much water we get? Is it by an application from us given our needs, or is it based on the number of people we have here?
Our water
Or-
district?
Yeah.
The state.
The
So
The state, what is,
It's
the
based
state
off
makes
of
an
metrics.
allocation for us.
No, so the state will make an allocation to our water district. as a-
To the water district,
And
which
so
is,
that's based, so the district's allocation is based on precipitation in the Sierra. And like I said, that will vary anywhere between 5% up to 60 to 80. I think we've had one year maybe where it's hit 80%, but anywhere between 5 and 60%. And I can't recall what the average is, so the state issues the allocation. to the district.
percent of what we're asking for?
So the district's allocation every year, their contract is for roughly 28,000 acre feet for the 4 cities.
Okay.
Of that 28,000, the state will say, based on hydrologic conditions in the Sierras, this is the percentage that the district will get. From that, Sierra Madre gets 2,500 acre feet.
Okay, but the state district is dealing with a lot of different districts in the state. How do they evenly distribute it, or fairly, I should say, distribute it
So
between?
every contractor has a different allocation, and they're all subject to the same percentage. So if our district gets 28,000 acre feet and it's a 10% allocation, they get 2,800 acre feet. If somebody has 1,000,000 acre feet, like Metropolitan has, millions of acre feet, they would get the same rate applied to their allocation.
So the state says 10% and everybody's 100% allocation gets reduced by 10%.
So if the allocation is 10%, it's 10% of your contract.
Am I missing something? Am I not getting it? Do you guys get it?
So
Yeah, we get it.
The state says, for easy numbers, the state says your allocation is 10,000 acre feet.
Okay.
And then they come back and they look and they say, everybody in the state, we're looking at everything that everybody does. Everybody in the state is only getting 10% of their allocation
get
across the
1,000.
board. So we'll get 1,000 feet.
Okay.
And the underlying assumption is that this is not always the primary supply of water for that municipality. This is a supplemental allocation.
Okay.
So the idea is that, of what you could get, you're only gonna get X amount, because they're rationing it.
So
But the initial goal was that it's not all your water that you're ever gonna get.
Just to be clear, the water district's primary source of water is through the California Aqueduct State Water Project. So based on the allocation that the state releases, the Department of Water Resources, whether it's 5%, 20%, 60%, that's the amount of water that our district will get based on their roughly 28,000 acre feet of contract.
To Commissioner Spear's point, it is in addition to what we have in the aquifer.
It is in addition to what we have in our aquifer.
Right, and they're expecting us to use our municipal sources first.
Correct.
And then be supplemented by whatever percentage they can give us of their water.
So that water is supplemental water. So this is a really tricky management that we do, right? So we know we have 940 acre feet. We know that the average consumption for this community is right around 2,500 acre feet, 2,300 acre feet. So starting on July 1st, we start importing water, and we import about 300 acre feet per month. And our goal is to bring in about 1,300 acre feet. So that 1,300 plus the 940 gets us to right around 2,400 acre feet. Then in May, we look at how much water we produced and what the difference is, and we'll make a little adjustment, because we want that number to match. Because any water that we bring in excess is for the general benefit of the basin that we don't get credit for. So come the end of the year, we want to make sure that we can't be under, but we don't want to be excessively over.
So you want to make sure you've used your allocation.
Exactly.
Okay. Interesting.
So that's
I think I
under
finally
that
get it.
500-foot rule. We can't imported water. We can't carry. The term is called carry over. We can't carry that water over. If we put in extra water into the basin, it becomes for the general benefit of the basin.
Okay.
And so the credits we get, that we've had, the 9505, that comes from,
That's
not-
our local water that we have rights to, that
Right.
we divert that water.
Right.
And even though we can't use it right now with the current hydrologic conditions, we still build that credit.
Okay, and that actually gives us monetary leverage within the system to buy, no?
So the way it works is water that's supplied from our district is only for Sierra Madre. Only the 4-member agencies can participate from water delivered from there. Water that gets released from the dam is Sierra Madre's water, and I think we've done it in the past, but it's really, especially during the 500-foot rule right now, there could be no exchanges of water. We have in the past sold some water to Arcadia, but under current conditions, we can't exchange or transfer any water between agencies.
Okay.
One more question. During the Bobcat fire, they were constantly dipping into those basins. Did that affect our water supply, or was that negligible?
It was negligible, and when you think about the benefit that water did for our community and keeping that fire away, the benefit far outweighed the water that they.
Oh, I
took.
agree, I was just wondering.
We actually were timing we knew how, approximately how much per load and how often they were coming. I don't know if it was every 5 minutes. When we factored the amount of water, at the $200 an acre, or $400 an acre foot, and the benefit.
Yeah,
to the
no,
community,
but that Sikorsky though could pick up, 5,000 gallons of water
Yeah, I just
in
wanted
a
to know if it
minute.
made a notable
And
dent.
just so just perspective, an acre foot of water is 325,851 gallons. So I don't know how many Sikorsky's.
Very,
Those pilots of track.
very good, thank you. Well, it's a very interesting subject.
Yes, apparently.
Yeah, no, it's, boy, anybody ever seen the Cadillac in the Desert or read the book?
I'm reading that book now,
Yeah.
and I want to extend this to the commission. Our water system is truly fascinating, and if you haven't had a tour of our water system, I'm happy to extend that invitation to you to come out and tour our water system. It's truly amazing.
Oh,
Field trip.
Yeah, when let's schedule a field trip. I would love that before we go into the other subjects like traffic and things like that. All right, well, very good. No other questions, then we've already covered the items not on the
I did, actually,
agenda.
somebody brought up a question.
Go ahead.
Resident Gary Hood, I believe. Is he still here?
No.
Perfect. He was wondering if the planning commission could bring to the attention of the community the new laws. And I just wanted to point out, we do. It turns out that we annually get a review from Mr. City Attorney about all the laws that are coming up or are about to come out or have affected us in one way or another. Challenging when we lose audience and those questions get answered, and that's just a great resource that people should realize, is that we are already doing that, and as long as I've been on the commission, we've been getting those updates. Seems like probably beforehand as well. So we'd just like to point out that that does happen. There really is a wealth of knowledge that happens at these planning commission meetings when you stay and listen.
When you go to every single one.
Yeah. And we try our best to explain what the rules are that we're trying to evaluate and use to, for our discussion.
Thank you. All right, okay. So that brings us to any planning commission reports then? Anybody have anything?
Oh, I have a comment.
Okay.
I've never really watched what gets recorded and be played back for the public. Are these PowerPoints included or supplemental? Because the PowerPoints have a lot of information nicely organized.
They are included, yes.
They're included so we can see each page on the screen clearly, and, okay, good.
Are they also as part of in the agenda packets, or do they not get
They are
included?
not included in the agenda packet.
Okay. Nobody has anything else? Planning and community
Our
preservation?
next planning commission meeting is September 16th. And
Bring a lunch.
yes, the topic is, it's a public hearing regarding the housing element. We'll probably have 2 meetings, including October 7th.
Okay.
So we're on a very tight time frame because it's going to go to city council also on October 12th and scheduled October 26th. So
Will we have the housing committee or HCD's updates to the existing SEIR by then?
probably not.
I thought we already had HCD's comments.
Oh, yes. We've gone through a couple of rounds. We should have the red lines available. We're working on those now.
Okay, great.
So did you just mention 3 dates for October?
So September 16th,
Okay.
next meeting before the Planning Commission, October 7th before the Planning Commission,
Right.
both housing element, then going to City Council for October 12th and October 26th.
So those are council meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
They added some meetings for us.
Lucky us.
Okay.
Those are all the comments that I have.
Oh, very good. Okay. Anybody has anything else? Then I guess we will adjourn our meeting to September 16th. Thank you.